Today, the cost of funerals has increased at an alarming rate. Funerals can be expensive and can be anywhere from $10,000 upwards depending on what you have. It has been facetiously said that the cost of dying is becoming greater than the cost of living. I want to show some ways that can be used to save money on your funeral. Let us look at what options we have for funerals. In New Zealand, we are not legally required to have a funeral, but this does present some problems, the main one being that mourners and friends of the deceased are not able to express their grief and loss as a group, yet the body still has to be disposed of, so there will still be a cost. I have heard that some crematoria will not handle cremations or will charge extra for funerals not handled by a funeral director. There are ways, however, to minimize the cost. The first is, have a home funeral. Some groups or people will come to your home and help you prepare the body for a funeral. They are there to give guidance and practical help. In this, the family make all the decisions and is fully involved with the funeral details and the funeral itself. It does help the grieving process. You can, of course, do it yourself, but there are things you will need to take into consideration. The first is that it can be very stressful, as there are a lot of details and paperwork to take care of on top of the grief of losing your loved one. If you choose to go this route, there needs to be planning done well in advance of your loved one's death. This is not as silly as it seems because none of us knows when we will die, unless, of course, we are suicidal. So it is never too early to plan what you want done when it happens. There are advantages to doing it yourself. The first is that it is very empowering, knowing that you have done everything you can do for your loved one, and secondly, it is low cost. Another way of having a funeral is to use a funeral director. You are not legally required to use a funeral director, but most people do. A funeral director can do everything for you, from collecting the deceased, seeing to all the paperwork, and arranging and overseeing the funeral itself. It is a good idea to shop around as prices vary, and it is advisable to choose a director who will meet your needs. While the majority of funeral directors are genuine, some will play on your emotions and sell you things that are not necessary. Some directors will give the impression that the more you spend on a funeral shows just how much you love the person. That isn't true, but some people do overspend on funerals, perhaps for show, out of guilt, or because they don't want to look stingy. Some funeral directors are not flexible to accommodate your wishes. Perhaps you want to use a particular person as a celebrant, but they stipulate you must use their celebrant. Maybe you want to hold a funeral in a certain place, but they are not willing to allow it. There is the danger also that because you are using a funeral director you could feel disempowered because they are doing everything for you. For some people this is okay. The third way to save money is by not having embalming carried out. The funeral director will suggest it from the point of view of ensuring disinfection and preservation of the body during the funeral process. They also say that it will ensure a more natural appearance of the deceased. Embalming is not legally required, though under certain circumstances it is advisable. For example, if the body is diseased it would be useful. Another example is when the burial or cremation is to take place at a much later date. If a body is to be transported by air, the airlines require embalming for international travel. So how can we dispose of the body? Looking purely at money-saving terms, donating your body to medical sciences is the cheapest method of disposing of the body. Not only can the whole body be donated, but body parts can be donated up to a certain age as shown in this slide. To donate your body you must apply to the Auckland or Otago medical schools. However, they won't just accept anybody, certain requirements must be met. But their websites will give details. Cremation. This is the disposal of the body by burning it. Your ashes can be kept, buried, or scattered at a place of special meaning to you or your family. You may need to obtain permission if you want the ashes to be scattered over private land, unless it's your own, or council or crown land. Cremations are less expensive than burials. Direct cremation. This is becoming the preferred way of disposal. In this, the deceased is usually taken by the funeral director from the place of death, placed in a coffin and taken to the crematorium to be cremated. There is no preparation of the body. The ashes are then given to the family and a memorial service can be held at a much later date or when convenient. This is the cheapest way of cremation. Burial. These can take place in a public burial ground or a cemetery, like in a Maori burial ground, in a religious or denominational cemetery, or in a private burial place that was used for burial before the 1st of April, 1965, so long as written permission is obtained in advance from a district court judge. If it's in an urban area, from the mayor or 2 local councillors. Permission can be withheld only if the burial would harm public health or decency. A burial can take place on private land if there is no cemetery or burial ground within 32 kilometres of the place where the person died or where the body is to be buried, with permission from the Ministry of Health and the local council. In any other place, whether or not it was used for burials before the 1st of April, 1965, if the Ministry of Health agrees in advance that the place is appropriate and safe for burial. For burials in urban areas, the mayor or 2 local councillors must agree to the burial. Burial at sea. You can ask to be buried at sea, but you'll need permission from the appropriate agency. For a burial within the territorial sea, 12 nautical miles from land, contact your regional council. If the burial is to be further out to sea, but within the exclusive economic zone and continental shelf, apply to the Environment Protection Authority. There are specific locations where sea burials are allowed. For a burial on the high seas, beyond the Environment Protection Authority and continental shelf, apply to Maritime New Zealand. Eco-funerals. Natural or ecoed burial. With a natural burial, the body is placed, unembalmed, in a biodegradable casket or shroud. The body is buried in a relatively shallow grave, for optimum decomposition. Instead of a headstone, the grave is marked by a newly planted tree. This option is only available in sites that have been specifically set aside for natural burials. For more information on natural burials, including a directory of natural burial sites, see the Natural Burials website. Caskets. The difference between coffins and caskets is the shape. Coffins are usually body-shaped, whereas caskets are rectangular. The cheapest type of casket is made of plain, untreated pine or plywood. A cardboard casket is cheaper still. A casket is not mandatory, the body may be wrapped in a shroud instead and strapped to a wooden tray for insertion into the cremator. An increasingly popular way to go is to build your own and use it for a different purpose, like a bookshelf, while you are alive. Have a look at the Coffin Club, which is springing up all over New Zealand. We'll take a look at their video.
Well, death's pretty natural, you know. It shouldn't be a frightening sort of situation. It's part of living.
Well, I think we're celebrating death differently now. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's the whole idea of the Coffin Club.
The Coffin Club is offering the creativity of going out the way the person would want. And I believe in our own little way, we are making quite a difference to the concept of death and dying.
We're a mad bunch, let's put it that way. But you got to be mad to do what we do, don't you?
When I first thought about starting a coffin club, it was a bolt out of the blue, really. They've just got a spray painter. Oh, mess. In 8 years, it's grown like topsy. And does make an impact. Now, you can see a lot of chairs around because we have a lot of people here. It's always a mess. That's fine. The burden of sorting out death can be overwhelming, but everybody's going to do it.
Heidi,
Do a test on one.
this is our height chart. So just to allow a little bit in the coffin, we go a little bit longer than what Kahu's height is. Righto, thank you.
I gathered some old blokes I knew who loved wood and were ex-carpenters, joiners, etc. And they absolutely loved it.
Well, you can tell most of them, we make and produce underground furniture.
How many coffins do you guys think you've made?
Probably about 700 gone through here since I've been here. That's a hell of a lot.
It's not just coming and making a coffin. Most find it very peaceful. They come thinking there could be a bit of morbidity, but they come in here and nobody is morbid, everybody's happy, and a coffin, after all, is only a wooden box that is made beautifully to their desires. You can see any of the coffins that are decorated and nearly work out what their life has been.
I call it my glory box. It's not my coffin till I get put in it. And although I'm prepared, I haven't booked my ticket to go yet. Because I love chickens, the idea was to find as many fun chooks, which we call chickens in New Zealand, and stick them on.
I love green, and I'm a very keen gardener, so I love anything that's green, and it's just me to a T. And I just feel that, my friends will enjoy it when they see it, because they'll say, that's Joyce.
Death is inevitable, isn't it? It's going to happen. So you might as well make the most of it and enjoy it. We just get a little box here which they can all do something with. It's not some fancy bloody mahogany whatever thing which nobody really wants.
They're going away for their last journey in something that belongs to them, that they've created, that is what and who they are. And we've just got a whole heap of beautiful boxes around.
The only thing I've got left to do is buy a jack-in-the-box. Get one of the blokes at the coffin club to put this in the jack-in-the-box. And when they walk me through the door of the crematorium, the jack-in-the-box will be on the end, and whoever's holding that end to push the button and he pops up. There, so he works. And I thought that will start the people, the friends, they'll all start laughing. So, and they know I'm all for a laugh. I'll stop him. So that's going to be, sorry. That's going to be my chuck in the box. I can't stop it, yes.
Sometimes I think it's probably the most important part of our Kiwi Coffin Club is the amount of love that goes round.
Hello, good morning, good morning.
It's very apparent that many of our oldies lack a human touch. Many of them have lost their partners, they have no family or their family are way away, and it's extremely important to be touched and loved by somebody. That probably helps with the burden of dying for a lot of our members.
I think we've taken some of that horrible stigma that goes with death and funerals and coffins, and we talk about it to all sorts of peoples, and when they come into the club and everything, and it's nice for them to be able to talk to us about it because we all know about it now, and that puts them at ease.
We celebrate birth, and at the other end it might be a dreary, doleful thing and not really express what that person's life was. It shouldn't be like that. Nobody has just an ordinary life. That's special. And surely if we're influencing people like that, we must be making changes. Must be.
Where's my house?
Gone. Is there a little dog in the kitchen?
We are fortunate in New Zealand that we can hold funeral services in many different locations, such as funeral homes, churches, private homes, and gardens. Funeral homes will charge for the use of their premises to hold the service, and so will some churches unless you are a member of that church. I have held a funeral service on the beach for a young lad who was a keen surfer. It was the family's wish and it was appropriate. Services can be held at the RSA, workingmen's clubs, or other clubrooms, and if a person is a member of that club, there may not be a charge for using the clubrooms for the service. Some services are held at the graveside, or virtually anywhere that seems appropriate. In some instances, it will be necessary to get permission. Great savings can be made on transport, as funeral directors will charge for transporting the body from the place of death and also make a charge if a hearse is used for the funeral service. There is nothing to stop you from using your own means to transport the body wherever it has to go. Just make sure the coffin or container is leak-proof. Make sure the vehicle is long enough. You don't want the coffin sticking out the end of the vehicle. Be sensitive to good taste and cover the deceased. Ensure the spare tire and jack are still accessible, just in case you need it. By law, the coffin must be securely tied to the vehicle. 1 or 2 rollers under a heavy coffin make things easier. Easier to put the lighter end of the coffin into the vehicle first. That is, feet first. Here are some of the extraordinary ways to transport a body to a funeral. The celebrant is someone who leads the service, a bit like an MC. This person can be a minister or civil celebrant. It can be a family member or friend, and this could save a few $100s. Anyone is allowed to take a funeral service in New Zealand. Depending on where the funeral is held, flowers are used as part of the decoration of the room. There is generally a wreath or bouquet of flowers adorning the coffin or casket, though this is not mandatory. Sometimes a bouquet may not be flowers. If the person is a keen vegetable gardener, it could be a bouquet of veggies. If it is appropriate, a single flower such as a rose takes a central place on the coffin. As well as flowers, some people personalize the funeral service by placing items that belong to their loved one on the coffin, such as golf clubs, fishing rods, paintings, and other items that show the deceased's interests. Again, a vegetable wreath instead of flowers is a way of personalizing the service if the deceased loved growing veggies. During a time of reflection where the mourners sit and listen to a song or piece of music while they reflect on the person who has gone, it may be appropriate for mourners to go forward and lay a single bloom or petals on the coffin as their gesture of farewell, or even at the hearse after the coffin has been put in. This is similar to the act of throwing sand or earth into the grave at a burial. It is good to have music played at funerals as mourners arrive, and this could be a CD. Many funeral services these days do not have singing, but if you decide to have singing, it is best if you have a decent-sized congregation or at least a few good singers. To leave the singing to the celebrant is not always a wise choice, trust me. To avoid embarrassment, choose songs or hymns that are well known to those attending the service. If people don't know the song, they won't sing. Singing from a CD is not advisable either, as sometimes the artist on the CD uses artistic license and varies from the verses, and this could make it difficult for the congregation to follow. If there is to be singing in the service, it is best to have some kind of musician to lead it. This can be an organist or a pianist, or even in some cases a player of an entirely different instrument. To save money, the ideal person would be a friend or family member. This also makes them feel they have contributed. It is also useful for mourners to have something to take away as a memorial to the one who has died. Service sheets are really only necessary if there is a song or hymn to be sung, or if there is to be any congregational participation, for example, in saying the Lord's Prayer. This can be as simple as an A4 sheet of printed, folded paper, or even just a bookmark with perhaps a photo of your loved one and the dates of birth and death. Funeral companies will normally offer this service, but with a computer and printer at home, much money can be saved. Newspaper notices are the usual way of informing the public of the death of a loved one and the date, time, and location of the funeral. However, this is not legally required. Newspaper notices can be expensive, especially if you advertise in more than one newspaper. They charge by the column centimetre. If it is to be a private funeral, a family may decide to put the funeral notice in after the service. In planning the service, it is a good idea to make a list of all the people to be contacted and even set up an email group in your computer email contacts. Some newspapers are reluctant to accept death notices from people other than a funeral director, so take a copy of the death certificate with you or attach a copy of it to the email. As people come into the service, a booklet or pages can be made available for them to sign as a record of their attendance at the service. Generally, grieving people don't remember who was at the funeral, and this booklet is good to look back on, and is useful later on as you may wish to say thank you to people for coming. Funeral directors usually provide this, but there are other cheaper ways of doing this. A small guest book can be purchased from a stationer, or printed sheets could be made at home. Some people like the service to be video recorded. To engage a professional videographer or photographer will only add to the expense. Some funeral directors use a service called One Room, and this streams the service over the internet in real time to those people who have the link to log on. If the funeral venue has internet facilities, a newer alternative is to use Zoom or other video conferencing software to broadcast the service to family members overseas in real time. But to really save money, a friend or family member can do this. At gatherings of many kinds, refreshments are usually served, and a funeral is no exception. The funeral reception is sometimes called the wake. It's an opportunity for friends and relatives to express their condolences to the close family members. Some funeral homes provide the facilities and the staff to serve this on the premises. There are other venues that can be used. The gathering can take many forms, from the traditional cup of tea and sandwiches to a drinks party at a pub. You can pay an outside catering firm to do the catering, but doing it this way and using the funeral home can be quite expensive. Paying a club or service group to provide and prepare everything is a cheaper way to go and also helps the club or service organization. So, these are a few ways how you can save money on a funeral. I hope this video has helped you plan for your inevitable future.
G'day. Well, every one of us is going to end up in one of these things sooner or later. But have you ever stopped to think all the work that goes in to make these coffins look presentable so they show you off to your best? Well, we'll go to Academy and see how they do it. So come along with me.
Another delivery of coffins has arrived to be used for funerals, but first they must be trimmed. Coffins are mostly made of custom wood these days, as timber is far too expensive. The first stage is to make a pillow using rolled up newspaper, held in place by a piece of calico. There's no point in using expensive materials just to bury or to burn. The inside of the coffin must be lined with a sheet of plastic to contain any fluids that may leak from the body, though this doesn't happen very often. Yet not all companies use plastic. Many make up a mattress of shredded paper to absorb any leakage. The plastic is placed in the coffin to form a leak-proof container. The shape of the coffin presents a bit of a challenge to get this plastic smooth. Once the plastic is smoothed out, it is stapled along the top of the side. Though the foot end won't be seen, the plastic is still folded neatly. The folds are held in place with staples once again. The part of the coffin where the head and shoulder go is curved, and this presents a challenge to line it properly, so tucks are made in the plastic end, and this is stapled in place. All the scrap plastic is then cut away, leaving a smooth surface on which to trim. Once the plastic is in place, the next stage is to build up the head and shoulder pads around the top of the coffin. This is done with strips of calico made into pockets to hold the filling. The calico is stapled about 3 inches below the top of the side and just past the curve towards the foot end. The pocket is made by folding the edge of the calico and stapling it to the sides. And the job is finished neatly. The filling of the pocket starts with the head pad, and this is just shredded paper. Plenty of shredded paper is used to make the pad solid, but not too tight, and the whole pad is held in place by staples. The ends are tucked in and the stray pieces of paper are pulled out of the way, and the pad is checked for firmness. Now the side and shoulder pads are filled. It's important that these pads are firm, as they will give support to the side set and give a bit of substance. It is also important that they don't protrude too far into the coffin, as it will make it difficult to place the body in the coffin. As he tucks it all in, he feels it for firmness and evenness all the way along. As he gets to the end of the pad, he pulls the calico fairly tight and then staples it to the top edge of the coffin. And there we have a nice even shoulder pad, and he does the same on the other side. All the edges are trimmed off. The coffin has been lined with plastic and the shoulder and head pads have been put in. The next stage of trimming is putting in the side set itself. The side set is the visible decoration, and the materials can be brocade, swansdown, satin or silk. The side set comprises a pillow cover, 2 long lengths of material that line the edge of the coffin, an edging strip or trim, and a face cloth. Here we have an embossed pillow cover. The 2 long lengths of material are stapled at the foot end of the coffin, the frills on each piece meeting on the centre line. At the head end, both pieces are pulled fairly tight so that the frills meet in the centre, right down the length of the coffin. And a staple is used just to hold them together. Starting halfway down, he staples towards the foot end, making sure that the material is reasonably flat, but not too tight. And he does the same on the other side. Once this is done, he can loosen off the head end and start to staple from that end. There is plenty of loose material which he uses to make a fold. Now he starts to make the fold in the material about halfway down. He has to make sure that the fold of the frill is in line with the rest of the frill, and also that the fold is straight. Once this is okay, he staples it in position. The double thickness of the material needs extra staples to hold it down. And he does the same on the other side. When it comes to make this fold, it's important that it's in the same position of the fold on the other piece of material, but also that the fold meets in the centre line. When the person is lowered into the coffin, these 2 side pieces are pinned together to make a sort of a tent to hide the person's legs from view. This is only one way a coffin can be trimmed. There are other ways that it can be done. They can be trimmed so that the person's whole body can be on view. All the excess material is now trimmed away, and all the stray pieces of cotton are removed so they don't show under the edging strip. The edging strip is now put on. This is made of the same material and has the same style frill. The outer edge has 2 layers. The bottom layer is stapled to the coffin, and the top layer hides the staples. This goes all the way around the top edge of the coffin. As he goes around the curve, he has to follow the curve loosely rather than pull the edging tight, as this will distort it and prevent it from sitting properly. As he comes to the corner, he has to make an angle join in the edging strip. It's important that in the corners each part of the edging meet and form a good join. Getting these corners to fit properly takes time and a lot of practice. On this corner, he has to make a reverse join. Once the person is in the coffin, the corners are pinned together to hold them in position. At the foot end, he has to make another angle join. The final angle is made in a different way, and he has to make sure that the angle ends neatly in the corner. The surplus is then put away. To put the handles on the coffin, he locates 3 holes on the edge of the sides. The nail is put in each hole to mark its position, and the plastic handles are lined up so that the centre of the handle is in line with the nail. He uses a piece of wood as a guide to show how high up the side of the coffin the handle must be placed. The top of the handles are nailed in position, and then 4 screws are put in the bottoms of the handle plate. This is the finished coffin without its lid.
Well, that just about puts the lid on it. As for me, I'm going to rest.